Not only do these guys give you the best Jazz coverage in the market, wow, they've got you covered with the Mammoth, the Cougars, the Utes, and the Aggies. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to talk some Stanley Cup playoffs and some Utah Mammoth. Let's get out to the zone phone. He covers the NHL for Sportsnet. He's Luke Fox with us here on Jake and Ben. Hi, Luke. How are you?
Hi, Luke. I'm doing well. A little tired because I've been sucked in by the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'm on Eastern Standard Time, but I can't help myself. I end up staying up late and watching every single game on the West Coast, even if it goes into overtime or threatens double overtime like last night.
Yeah, so what do you think of this series so far? Give us maybe a big picture perspective of a national or maybe even international view of how the Mammoth and Golden Knights are looking.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's fast, high octane series. A little bit of controversy, but the guys are playing hard, like they're checking hard, but it hasn't got into the antics that some of the other series have gotten into. It's just really fun hockey, and I think one of the things that I've been impressed most by, and I'm not surprised by it because I went to the Delta Center twice, once this year and once last year for a game. And I love how, it's built for basketball, but the way it's built is the crowd is almost on top of the ice. And I was talking to some of the players and they felt like it's a really unique atmosphere in that way, in that the crowd seems to almost have more of an impact in the energy of the building than in some of the other places. So I've loved being able to watch that, and it comes through on the broadcast, just the energy of the building, the fact that this franchise is getting to host its first playoff games, I think has been phenomenal. And the fact that they got treated to a win the first game and a really tight, exciting game last night with a thrilling comeback. Playoffs is so tight that usually once a team goes up 3-0, they lock it down, especially a veteran team like Vegas. So the fact that Utah came back and made it such an exciting game, pushed it to overtime, it was a banger. It was fun. It's been great hockey, and honestly, I picked the Mammoth for an upset, but I honestly think you could flip a coin here because these teams seem evenly matched.
Luke, with the Mammoth, obviously moving here recently, I admit that I am still getting to know a lot of the nuance with the NHL. And with this matchup, it appears that Golden State is a real physical, the physical reputation uses physicality, whereas the Mammoth have kind of leaned into speed. So which is usually an effective strategy in the playoffs, or what usually comes down to determine who comes out on top between teams that have such different styles?
Yeah, and it really in the playoffs, it does become almost like, they say that about boxing, right? Like styles make fights. And because the two teams play a best of 7 and see each other night after night, and the coaches make adjustments based on what the other team is doing, styles really come into play. I can't sit here and say, speed always trumps physicality or vice versa. You actually, in my mind, you need a bit of both. I'll give you an example. The Carolina Hurricanes have long been a very fast team, and they've always made the playoffs, and they have this reputation for winning a couple rounds. But then ultimately, they, take last year, for example, they ran into a team that's pretty fast but is way more physical in the Florida Panthers, and they made very quick work of them. So you almost need a blend of everything. You need some skill, you need some grit, you need some speed, you need some toughness. And in my mind, that's what makes hockey such a fun sport. It's also, I find it to be a blend of, skill and luck, just because you're playing with a frozen puck on ice, and you guys have watched like a puck will hit the post. Imagine if that was 2 inches the other way, or a guy high sticks a guy by accident. What if it misses the face? Then you don't have a power play. So there's an element of flukiness to hockey that makes it unpredictable, but I think it adds to the drama of it all and makes it a harder to predict sport than maybe some of the others. Like I think if you were to take an analyst who watches NBA, he'd probably hit on more of his first round predictions than a hockey analyst would because of that mystery element to it.
So, Luke, looking at the Mammoth, what storylines are you pulling out? Because I look late in the season, and it started to feel like Logan Cooley was becoming the face of the team. And obviously with Keller going to the Olympics, he had a lot of run, but the production late, and then the first few games, I thought he was the best player on the ice. That was my perspective. But are you seeing anything that's kind of maybe changing the perspective of the Mammoth?
Well, the goalie duel is interesting to me because Vegas has struggled to find its starter due to injury, and Carter Hart was kind of a late signing. He has been out of the league. He's been battling some legal troubles, and he was kind of a mystery box. Ironically, he actually played under John Tortorella, the Golden Knights coach that they just hired with like a week to go in the regular season, which was wild. So they have some familiarity there, and he trusts him. But Vejmelka, I'm a big fan of his, and he's always had really solid regular seasons. And if the Mammoth or previously the Coyotes came up short, no one said, "Oh, it was because of Vejmelka." He actually kept them in a lot of games. But this is his first time, seeing the big stage and getting tested in the playoffs, and it's a whole different animal. So the goaltending duel is kind of an interesting one to me. The other one is Dylan Guenther. I mean, this guy can shoot a puck. Like, holy cow. And he's so young. And, the fact that that they have him for years and years, I think is very exciting for Salt Lake City. And you always wonder about young guys, like, will the lights be a little bit too bright for them? And I would say it hasn't been. And I would say same thing with, some of the young Anaheim Ducks who are getting their first taste of playoff action. And, if Utah is to survive, that's the team they might face next because they're up on the Edmonton Oilers, and that series goes again tonight.
What did you think about Vegas canning their coach with 2 weeks to go and hiring Tortorella? Bold move or kind of wacky?
Yeah, it was bold. It was bold. You rarely see it, especially when they were in playoff position when they did it. And it just speaks to the urgency of that franchise, and I think it's a little bit on brand. They've always been kind of ruthless in how they conduct their business, whether it's a high-end free agent that becomes available. They'll find a way to get that guy, even if it means shipping other guys out who've been, long-standing Golden Knights. I think of Marc-Andre Fleury was one of the original Golden Knights, and he was like an icon there. You'd see Fleury sweaters everywhere. But once things soured, they didn't waste any time trading him away, getting rid of him. Riley Smith was an original Golden Knight. They got rid of him. They brought him back just recently. They kind of do anything at all costs to win. And I think if you're a fan of a team, you got to admire that to some respect. But Bruce Cassidy, the guy that they fired to bring in Tortorella, is a heck of a coach. And he's going to be the most valuable free agent coach on the market this summer. And I have no doubt he'll have a choice of a handful of teams to pick where he lands, because he's going to be very valuable, especially now that Peter DeBoer, who was a free agent, got snapped up by the Islanders right at the end of the regular season.
Looking big picture around the NHL, what trends are you seeing that are winning? And are these different trends? Is this a new style of hockey, or are we seeing a revolution of any kind of like where the sport is headed, how things are changing?
It's becoming higher scoring. I would say that save percentages as a whole are on the decline, and they have been for, I think it's like about 6 years gradually. But this year the league save percentage was below 900, which was a bit of a shocker. I never quite thought we'd get to that rate. But shots are down. So one of the big trends is teams are being more selective, not just throwing any puck at the net. They're trying to get the better scoring chance. But the shooters have gotten better than the goalies of late. That's one trend. And I also think there's a youth movement afoot. And part of that's in Utah, part of that's in Anaheim. Montreal on the Eastern Conference side of the bracket is a young, exciting team. Philly has the lead on a veteran team like Pittsburgh, who has legends in Letang and Malkin and Crosby. And the Flyers are young and inexperienced, but they're fast and they're hungry and they're skilled. So I think that's a major trend. For years and years, the NHL was really big on, you got to be playoff hardened. You have to have experience. The old guys know the ways. And there seems to be a turning of the corner. Today you look, the Ted Lindsay Award goes to the best player as voted by his peers. And Macklin Celebrini, a teenager, was among those names. And it just goes to show you that the young stars are kind of taking over here.
The Avalanche smoked the Kings. Is it the Avalanche's conference to lose?
It is. It is. Making quick work of your opponent in round one is really critical in hockey, more so than basketball or baseball, in my opinion, just because it is such a physical sport. So they get a bunch of extra days for their bruises to heal, to start strategizing about and watching the Wild and the Stars. So the winner of that series is who they'll get. So they get the benefit of rest, which is so hard to come by in hockey, especially this season, because the schedule was truncated because of the Olympics. So teams were playing almost every other day. So the fact that they're going to have nearly a week off before their next round just benefits them all the more. And plus, they check all the boxes, right? They have high-end game breakers up front, like Gabriel Landeskog and Martin Necas and Nathan McKinnon. They have, for my money, the best defenseman in the world in Cale Makar. And their goalies, were a question mark coming into the season, Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood, but they've been excellent this year. They won the Jennings Trophy for fewest goals allowed. So they kind of have a little bit of everything. And they're not too far removed from lifting the big trophy at the end. That was 2022. So they know what it takes. So I absolutely think they're the favorites. But like we talked about before, it's a wild sport. There's other teams that will build confidence as the tournament goes deeper. So it's no guarantee.
So, Luke, Florida wins the Stanley Cup in back-to-back years, misses the playoffs this season. How common is continuity from year to year as far as who's in the playoffs, who's expected to be back? Winnipeg had such a great season last year and struggled this year. So should we expect these teams that are here this year, especially at the top, to be back next season?
You should expect a good chunk of them. This year was unusual in terms of turnover. I want to say there was 6 or 7 teams that made the playoffs this year that didn't last year, and that was high. But there's always some. There's always like 3 or 4. It's not, hockey I find is very cyclical, and part of that is by design through the salary cap and guys just aging out or teams running out of money and resources to keep their good guys, so they go back into the system. And then the draft and develop model is so huge in the sport that, if you're near the bottom for a while, which is what the Coyotes were before they became the Mammoth, you accrue lots of picks and prospects, and hopefully you develop a young core that grows up together and gets good together. And we're seeing a little bit of that in Utah. We're definitely seeing that in Montreal and in Anaheim. And those teams should be good for 6-7 years. It seems like a cycle, but eventually you reach the mountaintop and then you come crashing down. Like the Chicago Blackhawks were a force in the 2010s. They were the standard of the league. And right now they're on one of the longest droughts. So they're on the bottom half of the cycle, and they're rebuilding around Connor Bedard, who is their superstar, their version of Macklin Celebrini. But they're hopefully on the rise. And it is very cyclical like that. But, if you have a young, good team, there's a good chance it's going to stay relevant for a half decade at least.
Hey, Luke, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And, hopefully you won't mind if we bug you again throughout the playoffs.
No, not at all. And enjoy the ride, guys. It looks like quite a scene. I'm a little bit jealous that I haven't been able to see one of those games in person, but I'm hitting the road soon. And the deeper the Mammoth go, the better chance I'm going to be able to experience Mammoth playoff hockey in person.
Ben and I broadcast from the plaza outside of the arena on Friday. We got chased off yesterday by some rain, but I mean it was a party.
4 hours before the game.
4
it was
hours.
full.
Yeah, it was wild. So if you get a chance, Luke, come on out and see us. And hey, we'll put you in studio.
Okay. Can I ride the Mammoth?
Oh, dude, we can work that out. Ben's connected. He's dialed in. We can make that happen.
At the
Okay.
very
All
least,
right,
I've
take
got
care.
like an old pickup truck you can like roll around
All
town.
right.
We can fake it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Luke.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Luke.
Luke Fox, NHL writer for Sportsnet.
Like that?
Thank you, Christian. Had to
overdue.
catch up on that.
But yeah,
We'll have to remember Luke. He was really good.
really good.
That was super good info.
And a good sign, Mammoth, I don't want to say squeaked in. They made the wild card and they were the top wild card spot. But he says, you make the playoffs and you've got a good young core. The odds of you sticking around are pretty good in the NHL. So that's, as we talked about this, I'm sure we'll talk about it more at 5 o'clock. This is all a part of the process. This is the build. This is getting back to relevancy and getting back to being a team that ideally, if you're a fan, can compete at the highest level. And this is just part of that process. But you're young and you're well situated to be around.
Coming up next, we have the audio vault. And man, I think we've got a good one today.
Okay.
I think we've got a good one today. You and I are both radio bozos, and we both, I think I can speak for you on this, enjoy a good radio bozo meltdown.
Yes. And you and I both also have insufferable egos, but maybe not quite as much as the next guy.
Who I actually kind of know.
Okay.
So we'll get to that coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.